Welcome to Pilates Teacher's Manual, your guide to becoming a great Pilates teacher. I'm Olivia, and I'll be your host. Join the conversation and the Pilates community on Instagram at Pilates Teacher's Manual, and visit buymeacoffee.com/Olivia Podcasts to support the show. Today's chapter starts now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited today to have the amazing Danica Kalemdaroglu on with me. She is the owner and a teacher trainer at Pilates 804 in Virginia in the United States. She has been teaching Pilates for over 15 years. She's also a dancer and a choreographer. She's been dancing for like 25 years. And I'm really excited to talk to her for multiple reasons. She's super neat. But one is that she did her training at the Pilates Center in Boulder, Colorado. And that is where Maria Earle, who is also a guest on the podcast, did her training. So I'm excited to hear about her experience in that training. Mostly, I'm just thankful that we were able to find a time to chat because she is doing all the things all the time. I'm so excited. Thanks for coming on today, Danica.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeehaw, let's go. Tell me about how you found Pilates in your wild, adventurous life.
Yeah, I wish it was a wild, adventurous story, but it's really like I was an injured dancer. I had been doing Pilates as part of dance training, just mat work and, really calisthenic dance stuff all through middle school and high school. And then I had a very serious injury to my meniscus when I was 16. And that is when my trajectory of my dance career very much changed. When I went to college, I did my undergrad at Goucher College. Inside the Pilates studio at Goucher College is where I first was laid upon a reformer and had the healing hands of a teacher look at me and say, "Has anyone ever told you that your entire pelvis is misaligned and there's no weight going down through the left compartment, to the left side of your leg and into that lateral compartment?" And I was like, "No, they told me not to do squats," because that's what they told me in physical therapy, right? They're like, "Don't do squats, don't hurt it anymore." I'm like, okay. And it was that first 20 minutes on that reformer and someone actually putting my whole body back together. And someone actually looking at the entirety of my body that made me fall in love with Pilates. And I was like, no more physical therapy. No, this is what I need. This is what I need. So I kept doing Pilates all through my undergrad. And then when it was time to get certified, I had enough of being in Maryland and I sought out the Pilates Center. I sought them out because I had read about not only that they were a lineage of Ramana Pilates and classical, but they had an alliance at the time. I'm not sure if this is true anymore, but at the time they had an alliance with Kaiser Permanente, which is the main health insurance out west in Colorado. And their studio was used as alternative physical therapy. So as trainees, we observed Pilates not as fitness, not so much as exercise, which obviously it is, right? We know that. But we were really watching how to use Pilates to heal and how to use Pilates to actually teach movement and educate bodies physically in space. And that's what drew me to the Pilates Center, because being a dancer, I knew that I could go and learn the choreography, whether I wanted to do a classical program or a contemporary program. I knew that I could go, I could learn the choreography, I could perform the Pilates, right? And if I wanted to teach that way, okay, I could teach that way. But I really was interested in not only healing myself and being able to rely on myself in space to help myself, but I get joy out of teaching by really watching someone come in one way, molding and working and shaping with them throughout the session and then watching them leave a different person. And then the next time they come back, they're still slightly different. And then the next time they're even different a little bit more. And then the next time and the next time, and watching them grow and actually connect to their bodies. And that is why I did not stay on the East Coast and hit it to New York and do Romana's program, because I was like, am I going to New York or am I going out West? And I went West because I was like, I want to know what that is right away to be able to help people. And that was probably the best decision for my career I've ever made.
It seems like becoming a teacher for you was really a natural thing, that this is already something that you were connecting to. Can you share a little bit more about sort of what inspired you to shift gears from dancing to teaching Pilates? Because that was a second ago, but yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah. Well, again, I wish that was like a more like exciting answer, but the answer is, I had to support my husband and I. Well, so my husband is a naturalized citizen, and when we first got married, the government of the United States lost all his paperwork. So he was ineligible to work for about the first year and a half of our marriage. And I was fresh out of grad school, fresh out of the Pilates center. And I was like, girl, you got to go to work. So I figured out really quickly how to teach a lot of Pilates, a lot. But the transition to actually becoming the teacher was not hard for me, because as a dancer, when you grow up dancing, you also grow up that student helper in the dance classes. And then I was teaching dance, and I had my own dance classes by the time I was 15 years old. So in terms of when my teaching career started, that was my high school summer gig, and that was my side gig all through college. And then it firmed up in college because I was taking pedagogy classes and dance education classes, and I learned about writing lesson plans and curriculum and K through 12 and adults, like the psyche and how teaching all of them is different. I got all of that in undergrad. So when I said I want my Pilates certification, in my mind, I was like, I'm going to get this Pilates certification, and then I'm going to go audition for dance companies, and I'm going to be able to make side money dance, and while I dance, teaching Pilates. Yay. Yeah, that was my thought. And then I blew my knee again, and then I got married. And then it was like, hello, you're a grown up with a busted knee, and you're really good at dance, but you're becoming a dance dinosaur. You know, if you're over like 24, it's like, woo, dancers and gymnasts, you only have so long, right? So teaching Pilates, it was like, all right, we're married, your knee is busted. You can do I did local performances, and I started choreographing for myself. But in terms of being able to, go to a big international company, no one's going to take someone who's that busted that young. It just doesn't happen. So I had to say, it's time to go to work. And I took everything that I had learned from the pedagogy and all of the curriculum I had studied in dance education, and I applied all of that to teaching Pilates. And I was fresh out of the program. And I want to say within 6 months of when I started teaching, I was teaching 40 hours a week when I first started teaching, because I had rent, we had student loans, groceries. We were young, so we didn't cook. We went out, So, I've always been teaching. I think I had one job. I had one job once at a J. Crew, and that is the only job I've ever had where I wasn't a teacher in some capacity of movement, whether it's some kind of dance or some kind of Pilates, or me just saying, yes, I can teach that. Because there was a time where I was like, I've never done tap, but I've taught tap. It's true. There was a time where I was like, yes, I will teach it. I will figure out a way. So it's quite nice now to just have to only teach one thing. One of my favorite sayings is, I only sell one thing. So if you walk into my studio with a spine, you're getting Pilates. I only sell one thing.
That's wonderful. Oh my gosh. I will say my partner is also a naturalized citizen, and there is so much stress already built into the process of becoming a citizen that as
Right?
soon as I heard you say that they lost his paperwork, I was like,
Oh yeah.
oh my gosh, that'll set you back like 3 years
Oh,
because
it
it takes
did. It
forever.
did. And I literally, we have an actual apology letter from INS because I documented every single piece of paperwork. And when they were like, oh, well, he hasn't filed this, I was like, no, we
Here's the
did.
receipt. That's a
Yeah.
disaster.
And it was, whenever you're dealing with governments, people take a piece of advice, document everything, Xerox everything in triplicate.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's very, very true. But yeah, oh my gosh, talk about jumping into teaching. And even when I was younger, and I am still young, I look back at me teaching 40 hours and I was like, yeah, that's not sustainable. So
Yeah, and my
it's
studio
really hard.
owners at that time, I was working at Excel Pilates in DC, and I was working in their DC studio and their Annapolis studio. And Lisa and Carrie, the owners, were so supportive of me. And like when I hit like 32 hours, they were like, "You're gonna burn out. You really need to slow it down." They're like, "You really need to slow it down." And I just had looked at them and I was like, "You slow down, okay? So like, I'm 25, I'm married, I got bills to pay, I don't have kids yet, so book me till I can't book anymore." Right now, if you told me to teach 40 hours a week, I would just turn around and walk away. There's no way.
That is wild. That is wild. Can you share a little bit about what the teaching program was like at the Pilates Center? Because you shared why you chose that as your program, but what was the training program like for you going through it?
It was intense. Personally, for me, I was double teaming. I was finishing my last year at CU Boulder in grad school, which is a 3-year graduate program in dance. And that third year, I made sure that I was always at the Pilates Center. And actually, also at that time, the Pilates Center had an alliance with CU Boulder. So, as a dance performance and choreography major for an MFA, coupled with going to the Pilates Center to get my teacher training, coupled with also taking the curriculum classes of Alexander technique that were offered in the program at the time, my graduate degree is technically performance choreography and body somatics, is what it says. So part of me going to the Pilates Center was also part of my graduate degree. So I had a very unique mindset in that program because I was really in there, not only learning Pilates, but really, really integrating it with everything I had been studying as a dancer basically my whole life. And that's why I say, like, I love working with movers. And in that program, it was intense. It's intense if you're not going to try and couple grad school with it. It's like that. Looking back on that, I'm like, how did I do that? Because there's no way I could do that now. No, 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 no. To be young. But it was, I mean, I was in that studio like a part-time job, 20 hours a week, observing, watching. You go through the steps, you start observing, you're working out, you go through the lectures, you start testing, you get your rights to student teaching, you start student teaching, and it's amazing how much information and how nurturing that environment is. And now that I'm on the other side of it and also a teacher trainer myself, it's amazing to me that they can pull it off because it's such a commitment for the trainees, for the apprentices, which that is why now today we have so many modulated teacher training programs that are more accessible, easier to get through. And I think there's good and bad with both, to doing the full apprenticeship. Like, you're going to get an insight into Pilates that you're not going to get if you're just doing module based, a weekend level here, weekend level there, and trying to teach at the same time that you're trying to get those modules done. And I I didn't have that issue of trying to figure out like, okay, I just learned reformer. Now let me figure out how to get my reformer clients, which is what I see a lot of new teachers struggling with today. Like they're still in the process of figuring out Pilates in their body. And then it's like, oh, now you're also teaching. Whereas at the Pilates Center and in more traditionally based apprenticeship programs, which take a whole lot of time, take a whole lot of money. Yes, they do. And so do the module programs. They all cost about the same if you really, really, really price it out to get a comprehensive certification. None of it's cheap. But being there and having such great teachers around, Rachel, Amy, and Deb, and there were numerous other, I got to study from Kim Hirosh, who is a Kathy Grant descendant. I got to go out into Denver and study with Kara Reether when she still had her studio out there. She just recently moved, And there are so many people who have come through the Pilates Center that are doing great, amazing things that it's great to run into them all the time. Like, and now that because of being online, it's like everybody's everywhere, but no one's really anywhere. But being able to just be completely immersed in the genius of these master teachers gave me a pedigree of education in Pilates that I think that a lot of newer teachers going through module-based programs are really trying to find. But it's so hard to find a way to do that because who can go spend 20 hours in a studio? Right? And not get paid for it, right? You're paying to be there.
It's interesting because I have, two minds about how teacher trainings work because before I became a Pilates teacher, I was a yoga teacher. And I appreciated when I was doing the yoga teacher training that the first thing they had us do was like immediately start teaching. On like our first day, they had us start teaching. And in some regards, that's great if you're trying to get over the anxiety around teaching in front of someone and leading people through movements. But on the other hand, if you hadn't, like you said, had Pilates in your body beforehand, if you didn't already know what the movements were beforehand, then you're doing these two things at the same time, which is kind of, you can't do either of them very well to begin.
Right.
And I feel like we kind of like write it off and we say, oh, well, being a teacher is a lifelong learning process. But I also see that we could probably help with that a little bit more potentially. And you are right about the price of things too, because sometimes you're paying your tuition, you're paying to take classes, you're paying to not be paid to teach classes sometimes as well.
I've been talking to a lot of teachers. And a lot of things that I hear about what people want in continuing education are things that I feel like apprentice-based programs cover, but not necessarily module-based programs. And I see them wanting more, and they're out there trying to figure out what they missed, where their gaps are, and fill the gaps. Right. And I see a lot of that being, what do you do on the business end now that you're out there and you've got the certification? How do you recoup that money on all of that teacher training? And it's one of the reasons I try to keep my teacher training relatively affordable, because if you can't make your money back that you invested in your training within 18 months, I take issue with that. And I don't care what modality of movement it is, with whether it's yoga or it's Pilates or anything. Like, you should be able to recoup that investment within 18 months, maybe 2 years, maybe 24 months, but it shouldn't take a decade to get your money back on your teacher training, because you are investing in yourself. And because, yes, we are teachers and great teachers are lifelong learners, you're going to invest in continuing education. So don't you want to invest in continuing education and actually learn new things that are actually going to help you progress, yes, as a teacher, but also how are you going to work with how are you going to keep your clients coming in, keep your clients happy? How are you going to transition with working online now? Like, that was something nobody really saw coming. Boom, here it is, right? But it is tough, the amount of money that it takes to become trained.
I do have a question for you because you came out of this apprentice-based program, which I almost see now popping up around the cool people on Pilates land in the wild, such as yourself, that apprentice programs are coming up as almost like a postdoc kind of program that you've done your training and now you're looking for that apprenticeship, because I feel like the big thing that we have a shortage on is time. Everyone wants to be trained so that they can start working to recoup their massive investment as soon as possible. And then, like we're saying, there's something missing. Like I really feel like I need more guidance than just the choreography. So yeah, I've been seeing those sort of like whether it's a mentorship program or an apprenticeship program, because there's something that it just takes time to get good at it.
It takes time. It does take time to get good. And you do need a mentor. You really, really do if you want to be a practitioner of Pilates. And this is something that I make a delineation for in my own brand of myself. And this is not to say one is better than the other, because the reality is in this industry, there's room for every type of teacher and for every person's persona as a teacher. There is room for all of it, and it is all necessary. But with that said, there is a difference between the teacher of Pilates who is approaching from a fitness mentality and health, fitness, wellness. We're doing exercise calisthenics, which that is really what Pilates is. Pilates is fancy calisthenics. It's real fancy calisthenics. And in root of it, that's what it is. But at the same time, you can be a practitioner that is healing and working with bodies and shaping their perspective and educating and being this movement educator. Within that, you can also be fitness and do fancy calisthenics. But to do fitness and fancy calisthenics doesn't always mean that you're actually practicing and really getting into the body and helping that body find something new. I see a lot of teachers who start out the fitness route, and then they just keep falling in love with teaching, and they keep falling in love with it. And then they want to know more. And then they realize, wow, I didn't do the apprenticeship. I didn't really have someone that I could really come to and say, all right, so when I'm looking at a pinky toe, and I know that pinky toe is throwing off that sciatica, what do I do? And to really be able to have someone say, yeah, okay, so this is stomach massage. This is awesome. Not everybody's going to look like this. Let's play with it. Let's do these things. Because again, and whether it's an apprentice-based program or not, you're trying to learn how to do Pilates at the same time you're learning how to teach Pilates. That's hard. And in the apprentice programs, they draw out the program long enough that you feel like you can get comfortable with both. Whereas in a shorter module program, it's just wham and bam, and now go figure it out. And you don't necessarily feel like you have that mentor figurehead that's going to be there for you to answer those questions. And then, yes, they're out there searching to fill the gaps, to find mentors after the fact of being certified. And like I said, I get requests all the time. And a lot of the questions I will get will be about things that in the short answer, I want to say, well, if you would just come do my training program, I cover all of this in my program because it's part of it. But not everyone can come to Richmond. So I too created a mentorship online that's going to be that's open for enrollment now. Summer Fix happens January through March. It's a 10-week program. And it's where I'm trying to actually do exactly that, be a mentor and help teachers who are on this journey of hunger. I call it a hunger journey because they want more information and they want to up level their body smarts and their teaching skills and like hone their teaching voice past what they were told to do just to get the exercises in and get the class and da 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 da. They really want to take that leap into being a practitioner, or they just want to stay a fitness instructor, but be really freaking good. Like really, really, really good.
Hi there. I hope you're enjoying today's chapter so far. There's great stuff coming up after the break too. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening and visit buymeacoffee.com/Olivia Podcasts to support the show. There you can make a one-time donation or become a member for as little as $5 a month. Membership comes with some awesome perks, including a shout out in the next episode, a monthly newsletter, a monthly Zoom call with me, and more. You can also visit links.oliviabioni.com/affiliates to check out some sweet deals on products I use and love. Now back to the show. So looking at your teaching journey from where you started over 15 years ago and where you see yourself now with this super awesome mentorship program, how has your teaching changed, or how has the way you look at bodies changed, or how do you even think about Pilates differently potentially?
I would say that I have become much more of an efficient teacher. Coming from dance and studying with so many different forms of movement, like people have to realize that as a dance student, if you're going to college for dance, you're not just like showing up and like going to dance class every day. You're studying choreographers and people who are invented movement techniques. You're looking at von Laban, and you're looking at Mabel Todd and the thinking body, which trickles all the way down into our work. You're looking at a lot of people who are also contemporaries of Joseph Pilates during a time when there were no physical therapists. Like there was you had to go seek out these people who were thinking about movement. And that goes all the way then into the branches of dance, the difference between Lamone and Martha Graham, which there's a lot of Graham in Pilates. People need to realize that, like a lot. But when I started out and I was young, I still had this dance teacher mouth, which is very visual and kind of long-winded. Because dancers are artists. We're trying to paint the pretty picture. And now as I'm older, I'm like, I'm only going to paint this picture of your hip socket so much. So here's what I want you to do. It's a ball and a socket. So let's make it do the thing that a ball and socket does. Because the more I can stay efficient with my mouth and my cues and how I use my body in space to help teach, because that's something a lot of teachers don't realize, how we physicalize ourselves as teachers in this space affects the session. And I once had a teacher telling me, if you go into a room of kindergartners, they're only going to behave as well as you do. Which, if you've ever taught little kids, it's absolutely true. It is absolutely true. If you go in and you're in a humdrum mood, you're going to have a real bad class. It's not going to go well. So as I've gotten older and I've been teaching more, I've read more about Joe's history and read more from those who studied with him, who became teachers and who did not become teachers. The more it's just about the work. So let's just get to the thing and do the thing, because the work works. It absolutely works. And making myself kind of cut back on that dance teacher way of being a teacher and really come into my own as a Pilates teacher, I would say that I am so much more of an efficient teacher than when I was young. And being able to look at a body and say, this is what I see. This is what I know. This is what they don't know. This is what they don't feel. So let's find the one thing that we today can get them to figure out, which is the whole root of my way to approach lesson planning. Teach one thing. And I've got a whole free posium out about that right now if people want to sneak onto my bio links and check that out. Because lesson planning is, again, one thing that I see that a lot of teachers aren't taught how to do. You're taught how to do the Pilates. So either you follow the order or you make a whole bunch of movement flows and put it together. In my teaching journey, I started off, I was like, we are going to do the classical order. You know how bored I got? It's so boring. I'm sorry. I cannot teach stomach massage but so many times in a day before I'm like, just scoop cheese, right? At the same time, it is exhausting to constantly have to sit down and keep making up new pieces of choreography. That is exhausting. Somewhere in there is a blend, is a meeting in the middle where you can actually formulate lesson plans on the fly and quickly. And as I've grown as a teacher, I have learned to do that in the shower or brushing my teeth or in the car on the way to the studio. I do not spend more than, I would say, 10 minutes a week planning for my entire week. Because one thing I've also found, the more I plan for a class, the more that plan is going to get thrown to the wind when somebody comes in and they're like, so I was playing pickleball and I tripped over the da-da-da-da-da. Now my elbow doesn't work. Right? So it's like you make a plan and then they mess your whole plan up and you just got to put it all together anyway. And in my years of teaching, I've gotten pretty good at just shifting gears and saying, all right, this is the thing we're going to do. We're going to do this for the next 50 minutes. And then I'm going to give you homework. And then when you come back, it's going to be better. And then we're going to do something else, or we're going to expand on this more. And then they keep coming, and then they keep coming, and then they keep coming. And then amazing things happen. And they're getting the fitness and they're getting the fancy calisthenics, but they're healing and they're learning and they're growing. And that is what satisfies me and why I'm like, okay, I don't know how I'm actually ever going to retire from teaching, because what the hell else am I going to do?
You've brought up a couple things that I want to circle back to. And one of them is that I feel like a lot of training programs are setting you up to teach group classes, and they're setting you up to just narrate a movement experience and we'll hope for the best. Like, of course, there's some adapting that happens, but I think that it takes so much confidence in your teaching, so much knowledge that you've shifted your self as a teacher from trying to remember the next thing you want them to do to really looking at what they are doing and then changing based on like what you're actually seeing. Like you're looking at them beyond, are they going to fall off of something? And they're really like, hey, that's kind of not where I want it to be. And then having the kind of the ability to like step back and be like, all right, well, we were going to do these other 6 things, but what I actually want to do is talk about that hip and where it is and why it's like that. That's something that happens, I think, a lot more in private sessions as a necessity. You're working one-on-one with someone versus group where you're kind of ready to like lead the band through.
I absolutely agree with you. In private sessions, you're really able to like get into that spine, because it's just you and that's fine. And a lot of people don't know this about like super, super classical studios, super, super traditional studios, which I love to be in them, but I also love to leave them because, well, it's a lot. But in back in the day, they didn't teach classes. They only taught private. Classes became about because of the development in the industry in a lot of traditional and classical studios, because there weren't, as all the reports say, Joe didn't teach classes except for when he was up in Jacob's Pillow. And that's where you see him teaching group mat classes and actually teaching group classes. But and as in Caged Lion, John Steele writes about how everybody came in, did their own workout. He did privates with you until you were ready to like just kind of do your thing, and everybody was open gym, do your thing. It's a gym. So this idea of group classes really is a product of the development of the Pilates industry and the fitness world. And for the studio owners out there, it's way more lucrative. The more bodies you have in there, the more you're going to make as a studio owner. So if you're going to run a teacher training program, you're going to try and make teachers that fill those classes because that's your business model. And I know a lot of teachers who love teaching group classes and only want to teach group classes, but it takes a whole different level of energy that you have to keep up as that teacher. I could teach 20, 30 hours a week. I can't teach 30 group classes a week. I can teach 30 privates a week, no problem. I can't teach 30 group classes a week. Good Lord. Right. And I think a lot of programs are trying to cater to what the business model of that studio is. So if you're a teacher out there looking for a program, look at what the business model of the host studio is, because that's what kind of teacher they're trying to make you. And it's hard for me when I'm trying to find new teachers, because there are so many teachers who are being trained in this way to teach group classes. And in my studio, I run it as a healing practicing studio. We teach majoritively privates. I do have small group classes. And by small, I mean 3 people, 6 at max. And that was pre-COVID. I've still got to wait for COVID to go away before I can get back to 6 people in an apparatus class and like 12 people in a mat class. That's it. That's where I tap out. And it is very challenging if you've got a group of 12 people on a reformer. And let's say it's 12 beginners, right? But let me set up this anxiety attack for everyone real fast, because if you're a teacher and this is happening to you and it stresses you out, I want you to know that it should stress you out, and it is okay that it stresses you out. If it doesn't, it'd be weird, right? But like, say you've got 12 beginners, 2 of them have done footwork before. The rest of them have no idea what's going on. And on top of that, maybe one of them does a whole bunch of CrossFit and is like super fit. But then there's like postpartum mom who's still nursing, right? And you're sitting there going, all right, I got to keep them safe. I got to make sure they know how to use the equipment. I got to make sure they don't fall off the equipment. I got to make sure they can actually do the things I'm asking them to do. And I have to be able to give corrections so that they know that they're like being seen, so that they keep coming back. That just made my heart like skip a beat thinking about how much pressure that is. Like, that is so much pressure. But again, that is a training module, and that is a teaching reality in so many business models in studios. And there is a way to still get into people's spines and help them and correct them. It's not going to be as efficient as if you are in smaller groups. Quite honestly, I think one Pilates teacher watching 5 bodies is enough. 5 for me is like, my eyeballs can't watch any more legs, right? Like I can't see more than 5 pelvises at once. But there is a way to still, with your teaching voice, guide that class. It takes time to figure out. And it would be best if you could figure it out in smaller numbers, 3, 4, 5 people in class, if not a private. But then again, and the biggest problem I see with that is not even how scary that whole scenario that I set up is. What I see in that is that it doesn't give you as a teacher the room to try new things and figure out what kind of teacher you really are. Because if you've got all these people in this class and you're just trying to get them through it and keep them safe while still teaching, you don't even have time to, at the end of it, to go, what did I take away from that as a teacher, right? Whether it was a good class or a bad class, right? I've seen teachers teach great classes, lots of people, and then I'll ask them, so how did that enrich you as a teacher? And they're just like, what? And I'm like, you don't even know what happened during there, because you were just so like, boom, 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 let's do this. And now we're on to this. And it's like, but you as a teacher, how did it enrich you? And I think as people teach, they start to want that more and more. Otherwise, here it comes, you get burnt out. If you're not being enriched as you teach, as a teacher, you will get burnt out. And you have to also, as a teacher, give yourself the right to evolve. And maybe you start teaching those big, giant group classes, and then you realize, now I'm ready to move on to something else and try something new. It's hard to do that if you're stuck in someone else's business model that doesn't satisfy you as a teacher. And I'm thinking of a couple of my friends right now who are going through this. because it is a growing kind of like, it's a growing chatter conversation.
So you've been dropping little advices constantly throughout this, and I don't want to minimize those, but when you're looking at this situation and this situation that your friends are in as well, what advice would you give teachers who are, maybe they're new at teaching, maybe they're like you and they're coming out the gate and they're like, I need to be a marketable Pilates teacher and say yes to everything. What advice would you give to that person?
Oh, wow. There's so much to say to that person. First, breathe, breathe. Please breathe, because it's going to feel like such a pressing issue and pressing problem. And it's like, breathe, breathe, breathe. First off, right now, we're coming off of COVID and a pandemic, and I am very much a realist. Everybody needs to make sure they can pay their bills. Okay. So this is something I say to my children. I'm like, you deserve to be happy. You can absolutely be happy. You can have everything you want, but sometimes you're going to have to do stuff you don't want to do. Right? And so you got to pay your bills. Figure out what your next goal is. Like, what's your next goal? Right? And just pick one thing. Don't brainstorm a whole whiteboard of goals, no, just like one thing. And start in your day-to-day practice of teaching and your day-to-day practice of the Pilates yourself, okay? Because you have to keep practicing Pilates yourself forever. And start making daily goals that you can have to get to that end goal. Like, I'm going to do this today so that it helps me get to this, right? So say you're that teacher who's burnt out teaching all these group classes, you want to get more private. So what can you do while you're still paying your bills, right? Because you can't just, say, bye, I'm out, I quit. Maybe you can. You're awesome, right? Right? But if you want to get to that place where you're working, say your goal is to work more intimately with clients, because that's what we've been talking about. Like, what are you going to do today to help you to get to that goal? Are you going to do something as simple as make a 5-minute workout video, slap it on YouTube, put the link in a QR code, and let people scan it on the phone after you teach a class. And you say, I got some homework for you guys. Try this. Start building your own following out of these big group classes that you're teaching, right? Now, I understand people are going, well, I'm in non-compete. I'm under a non-compete in the studio and this and that. If you're an independent contractor, no, you're not. If you're an employee, okay, but I don't think a studio owner is going to be upset at you at all for saying, hey, I made this free little YouTube video if you guys want to check it out, because everybody's got a free YouTube video, right? Right? As long as you're not saying, hey, I'm teaching privates over here for only $20. Come on. They're not, your studio owner's not going to be mad at you. And if they are, then your next goal should be finding a studio owner that supports you. Right? But you can make little steps every day to getting to that change. And yes, you've got to be creative about it. And yes, if you don't like YouTube and you don't like technology and you don't like making videos, I am sorry to tell you, you got to get over it, because it's the only way in this day and age to scale your business, scale you as a teacher, scale your persona and your brand. And you might be teaching out of somebody else's studio. You are still your own brand inside of that studio. And good studio owners make their teachers a team, but they also respect the fact that their teachers are individual people and need different things, right? And those owners we're out here, I promise. We're out here. There's more of us than you think there are. We're out here. But you've got to start making the steps now. My advice is don't wait. Don't wait. And it doesn't necessarily mean invest more money in your training or your continuing education. It doesn't have to mean that. It can mean more so, like, even if I did this for a while. I went through a period where I subscribed to everybody's newsletter just to figure out why they wrote newsletters. And what the next email was going to be. And if I clicked on this link, what would happen, right? It's use everything around you as research, right? You can do continuing education on Instagram for free if you're like, I'm going to research and try and figure out how this person did this. Like I'm doing that on the business end now. I'm like, oh, funnels, because I don't have any degrees in marketing. I have no background in it. I'm trying to teach myself, right? And same thing goes for if you want to set a new goal for yourself as a teacher and move further into a different place in your career. You do have to take baby steps, because unless you can just, call your sugar daddy and quit your job. Okay. But there's so much that you can do in little steps to really get to that big goal and still pay your bills.
I love that. Can you also share, because I'm sure as people are listening, they're like, wow, Danica's amazing. I led with that. I led with saying she was amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about ways that teachers can connect with you and hang out with you and take advantage of your amazing work that you're doing?
Yes, I would love to. So like the first way obviously is come to Richmond, Virginia. No, not gonna happen for like everyone in the world. Gotcha. So I started Pilates 804 online, my online platform, pretty much like, COVID, right? I had already always been teaching online. I had privates with Zoom clients before COVID hit. So my transition to teaching online was just like Monday to Tuesday. But I didn't have anything in terms of coursework, right? And I was just doing the Zoom classes, and that got very tiring, trying to like hold down the house, the kids, the things. That got exhausting. So I actually stepped away from doing those Zoom classes pretty much as soon as I possibly could, because I did not enjoy them. I did not. But I started creating coursework. So on my online platform, which is Pilates804online.com, I've got a movers mat membership for people who are like, I don't like equipment. I just like getting on the floor. And I use it, and my clients use that a lot as their homework, which I suggest to anyone out there. Have a way for your clients to digitally access free homework. Not only does it tell them that like you care and they can work out at home, it makes your job easier because they stay in the work without you, right? And I also do these, I just did one yesterday, F-Bomb Friday workshops, where as part of my studio, we do staff workouts pretty frequently. We have like one big staff meeting every month, and then the rest of the time we just work out. So it's like, we should just turn the camera on and put these out. So there's a great way to work with me. And then I do have some on-demand coursework, anatomy and kinesiology plus movement fundamentals, because I am an anatomy nerd. And that is really the basis of my approach as a teacher trainer and teaching movement and teaching Pilates. Like, you've got to know the rules of the body and how we work as simple machines. Like, you've got to know. So I've been working for the last year and some change to really get coursework up that's digitized on demand. And that's what SomaFix is. You've got self-study of my A and K course combined with weekly seminar meetings that we're going to have live. And I've expanded the curriculum of what A and K is to put it directly into the studio on the equipment. So we will really, the week where we're doing the module of the shoulder, we're going to really work shoulder pathologies inside the studio so that you can immediately take applied anatomy to your clients. Because if there's one thing I see across the board in training programs where there's one gap, it's in anatomy and kinesiology. For me, that is, again, the secret sauce of my teacher training program. And the trainees that I have worked with, I see the difference in them taking the time with the A and K that I make them take. I see the difference in them as teachers versus teachers who come in to interview with me and they say they studied anatomy in their program. But then I find out that it really is just kind of memorization, some flashcards, and, like a easy true false test. That's not how a mover learns anatomy. And we're movers. If you're a Pilates teacher, you're a mover. Like, if no one's told you that, I'm going to tell you that. You're a mover before you're a teacher. Okay? Like, you know that, right? But movers cannot learn anatomy just by looking at a book and going, pectorals, check. We have to physicalize it so that then we can help our clients physicalize it, right? So you can take my A&K on-demand course as is right now if you want to just go do it. But it's going to be so much more if you join me for SomaFix. And this is the first time I'm really doing a lengthy mentorship, but this is in 10 weeks. If you were in my teacher training program, this whole thing would be one weekend lecture. This is how it gets done in my studios. It's one weekend lecture that is done right at the beginning. And then we start doing beginning movement stuff. And then we would go into the first weekend of beginner exercises. And it's done in one weekend. However, it's spoken throughout the entire training program because it all comes back to this approach. People test out with me. They always finish and they're always like, that was like, for those who've been to grad school and if you've ever defended a thesis, right? That's what they've said to me. They're like, that wasn't so much a test. That was really like defending a thesis. Like, why am I making these choices? And I'm like, I know. Your last test with me, that's all I sit there and do. I sit there and go, why did you choose parallel? Why did you choose tabletop? Why did you choose to do extension right here? There's no wrong answer. You just have to be able to give me one, right? Like you just have to be able to answer it. If you've been to grad school, you're nodding your head because you're like, yep, that's what grad school's like. It's just a whole bunch of why. I've been wanting to work with more teachers more and more, and I'm really trying to capitalize on the good part of COVID in that we are so much all closer with technology, and I am bringing that into my teacher training. And it will probably replace the majority of my in-studio apprenticeship because it is very hard as one person to run an apprentice-based teacher training program. And I think that's a big reason you're also seeing them disappear. Aside from our industry having this model of like module-based programs and, teachers who teach classes, it is so much on a teacher trainer to do those weekend lectures and do those weekend seminars. And it takes you away from your family, which causes stress in your house. And it's one of the brilliant things about the Pilates Center. That is another reason why it works so well and why trainees get such a great experience going through there is because there's more than one teacher trainer. There's more than one person to go to when you are stuck. And there's more than one person looking at you from across the room. Do you know how many times I thought I was just like alone doing my workout in the Pilates Center? And the next thing I know, a mentor, a teacher trainer would walk by me and be like, no, your breathing's not right. Try again. And I'd be like, where did you come from? Whereas the majority of programs out there, it's like me, it's one teacher trainer. And, that's the majority of programs. And that is very taxing on that one teacher trainer. So I'm really trying to expand my offerings, not only to reach more people, but also to make it easier on myself because it's hard. It's really hard to try and be that one trainer.
I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your wisdom and your really fantastic sense of humor. I mute myself when Danica's talking, but I was laughing the entire time. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise. I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you. I had such a great time. And I've been a fan of yours for so long because I've listened to many of my friends on here.
All the cool kids are on the podcast. It's true.
Yeah, I know. All the cool kids. And it's actually, are you ready? It's my first podcast.
Congratulations. You crushed it. Thanks for listening to this week's chapter of Pilates Teacher's Manual, your guide to becoming a great Pilates teacher. Check out the podcast Instagram at Pilates Teacher's Manual and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. For more Pilates goodness, check out my other podcast, Pilates Student's Manual, available everywhere you listen to podcasts. The adventure continues. Until next time.